Mr. President, how are you?
I'm well. Is this Sherwin?
This is Sherwin. Very nice to be talking to you.
Well, thanks for having me, pal.
My pleasure. So I got to get right into it, Mr. President. What is at stake for African American voters in this election?
A great deal is at stake. All the progress we've made is at stake. For example, right now we've lowered health care costs. I've been able to walk in and make sure we forgive student debt for people who are struggling to get to school. We provided billions of dollars to HBCUs to give them a fighting chance. We've changed prescription drug costs by allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices so that people on insulin are paying $35 a month instead of $400 a month, and all prescription drugs can be limited to $2,000 a year, even though cancer drugs are $10,000, $12,000, $14,000. We're strengthening Medicare. Look, we stand up for principles. Our democracy is at stake. In fact, look what he's doing with Putin and with Kim Jong-un of North Korea. Look at him saying we don't think a country is paying enough for their own defense. Then when they get invaded by the Russians or anyone else, that's up to them. We're not going to help. He has a fundamentally different view than the vast majority of Republicans, I might add, in the past, as well as me and the Democratic Party.
Mr. President, people may ask, and they do often, what has the Biden-Harris administration done for me as an African-American resident in Wisconsin? There are some accomplishments that people may not be as familiar with. Can you give us a few of those?
Well, sure. Look, number one, we got through the toughest time in history. The result was able to vaccinate the country, and we sent $1,400 checks to people who were having trouble. Black child poverty was cut in half in 2021. We built black wealth, 15 million jobs nationwide, more than 2.5 million for black Americans. Black wealth is up 60% since the pandemic. Home ownership is up, and I'm fighting back against the radical bias in home appraisal. If a same home built on one side of a highway in a black community as built in the white community, they devalue the home in the black community. 200,000 new business applications in Wisconsin after investing hundreds of millions of dollars in small businesses. We have 76,000 black homeowners, more than $800 annually on their FHA insurance mortgage. We saved them. And look, and we also relieved student debt, $160 billion in student loan debt for 4.6 million borrowers, many of them black borrowers, and a plan to relieve student loans debt for $30 million overall. And as I said, we lowered prescription drug prices. We're also in a position where we invested in communities too long left behind. We provided, for example, $9 billion in private and public investment across Wisconsin. That includes $800 million for clean water infrastructure. Every home will have clean water pipes going into their house, and to help replace every lead pipe in Wisconsin, where black kids have lead poisoning 4 times the rate of white kids. But we put money in people's pockets as well. Like I said, I sent $1,400 checks to get through the pandemic. On top of that, I sent checks for $300 per child per month for families, bringing down the cost of child care. Making progress, corporations are still ripping off people, though. We're cracking down on corporate price gouging. We're stopping banks, hotels, and airlines from charging these junk fees. Why, in God's name, if you bounce a check, should you have to pay $30, $35, $40 for that because you bounced a check? I've changed that so they only have to pay $8. So there's a lot of things that add up, but we have more to do. Trump has a very different view of the community, and look what he wants to do. Everyone deserves peace of mind and a little bit of health care. We've lowered the cost of prescription drugs. Black families have health coverage covered by the Affordable Care Act more than before. Black enrollment has nearly doubled. I'm sorry to go on because there's so much here. We've saving families $800 a month on health care premiums. We took big pharma, so Medicare took them on so they can negotiate drug prices, lower them significantly. And by the way, when we lowered drug prices, we lowered the federal deficit by $160 billion when we did that because they don't have to pay the amount of money. And, the whole idea is there's a lot to be done, but main thing is I think we understand that the black community is a critical for the growth and security of the country. And we understand it, whereas Trump, he's still accusing the Central Park Five. He's the founder of birthism. He was trying to repeal Obamacare. He's done virtually nothing, and he wants to cut access to voting. The whole range of things that make a fundamental difference here.
Mr. President, can you commit to protecting the Affordable Care Act? Because I know you, as well as anybody else, knows that there are huge health disparities in the black community, and you also know that the Affordable Health Care Act is a big effing deal. Can you commit to protecting that if you're reelected president?
I absolutely promise you, commit to that. The Republicans tried to get rid of it 50 times, 50, and Trump committed to get rid of it, said he's going to get rid of it now. And why in God's name are they doing that? And look, so many members of the black community, and not just the black community, but minority communities, they're in a situation where they have a pre-existing condition. They would have no access to insurance at all. I mean, this is crazy. And by the way, beyond the moral requirement, there is a practical requirement. It lowers health care costs across the board when people when they have those insurance, when they have coverage. And but I absolutely guarantee you, it will not pass on my watch.
Mr. President, in the state of Wisconsin, the margin for your victory in 2020 was very thin, something like 20,000 votes. How can we convince people that every vote counts, and specifically African Americans, their vote counts as well?
Well, look, if you don't vote, if they don't show up, folks don't show up, you don't have any say on who's going to be your next president. You're going to, and the guy I'm running against has done nothing for the African American community, virtually nothing, except criticize it. I think that, look, as I said, we created 15 million jobs. We have, the unemployment rate for African Americans is as low as it's been for the longest time, where Trump is, his threats that he posed in 2020 are greater today. The guy has sort of lost his mooring. He seems like the guy who just doesn't know what the hell he's doing anymore. And this is a guy who's just, if you read Time Magazine's cover article, he's talking about being a dictator on day one. He said it would just be a return to the chaos, division, and violence of the mega Republican, extremism. And there's so much at stake: democracy, freedom, our economy, all are on the line. And think about this: what's he doing for education? Look, what we found out, and I'm going to get it done next time, I couldn't get it done this time, is that if a child comes from a home that doesn't have books, or there's a broken home, no matter what the background of the child is, the family is, the fact is they're going to hear 1 million fewer words spoken by the time they get to first grade. And by just sending people to preschool, kids to preschool at age 3, not daycare, preschool, 3, 4, and 5 years old, you increase by 58% the ability of them to get through all 12 years of school. I think we should have free community college, cutting the cost in college in half. Give people a chance, just a chance, a fighting chance, and that's what I'm about.
The 46th President of the United States, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. Mr. President, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking time to speak with me.
Well, I hope I can come back on your program. Thank you very, very much for the time.
All right. President Joe Biden, everybody. Well, that was fun. And you heard him. He wants to come back on the program, so I'll take him out to lunch next time he's in town.